Hey everyone, this is Jay, also known as Jay Nemesis from eToro, where I trade as a popular investor. This is our eToro weekly update for week 31 of 2018. This week we have a portfolio change of minus 4.42%. Sounds pretty big, and it is indeed quite a large swing for the portfolio. This is caused mainly due to the hectic earnings week that we've had this week, and of course the major swings in Bitcoin, which you'll hear more about in a minute. Realized profit plus 0.06%, and 41 trades were closed in total this week. Our top news this week, ICE is set to launch a Bitcoin futures market, the Backed. This is actually a pretty controversial topic in some ways. So this is a big ecosystem. They've already got partnerships in place with both Microsoft and Starbucks, which is the two names that have been going around a lot surrounding this news. The Microsoft stuff, from what I can see, is actually just because they're using that to build the system. They're actually using Microsoft's Azure cloud platform. And for Starbucks, no one's really sure, but I think it does lend itself to the idea that Starbucks is gearing up to accept Bitcoin. It doesn't necessarily mean that, though. There could be something else going on behind the scenes. But when they were describing exactly what's going on here, they did say that it's to support spending, holding, and storing Bitcoin as well. So we're unsure exactly how Starbucks ties into this yet, but I hopefully we'll find out, and hopefully it is that they are indeed going to start accepting Bitcoin. So basically what they want to do is set up a futures market where the contracts are potentially being settled in Bitcoin rather than in US dollar, which is what the CBOE does and the CME. This is a big difference, and it's important because they're also going to be using leverage. And obviously, that's kind of incompatible with how Bitcoin works. If you use the way that monetary banking and things like that works at the moment is, if a bank makes a loan, they can ask for more money back, even though technically that money doesn't exist because, well, there's an inflationary supply, so at some point it will probably get created, right? With Bitcoin, it's a bit different, though. So there are quite a few fears about potential for decoupling the price on here to real Bitcoin, and the fact that there is potentially going to be no real physical Bitcoins backing, well, not physical Bitcoins, but no real Bitcoins backing some of these contracts. So it's an interesting piece of news, kind of a double-edged sword, and there's a lot of reading that you can really do about this. ICE is a major organization from the guys at the top of the New York Stock Exchange. They're the people that operate the New York Stock Exchange. So this is really, really big news, on the same kind of scale as the ETF stuff that we've been looking at in the past. So it's going to make a big impact on the markets. I think that actually the market dropped because of this news, because of the same fears that I have over it, about the fact that they're trying to do derivatives of Bitcoin that are not actually backed by Bitcoin. So we'll see how it plays out. But for me, it's actually kind of bearish news, but also kind of bullish because you have the fact that they're going to be potentially onboarding some very, very big companies and big banks into this space. EOS have also been busy recently. The community has decided to carry out a stress test this week. So if you head onto Twitter or onto different social media, you'll find the hashtag EOS888 going around. And that's because at 8 a.m. Tomorrow, which is the 8th of the 8th, they will be trying to push through as many transactions as they can through the EOS network. And the goal here is to really try and push the boundaries. Currently, EOS has a pretty solid record of around 3,700 transactions per second as its maximum that it's ever hit so far. And I think basically the community is kind of bored of it, and they want to try and push the boat out further and really display how EOS has progressed in the couple of months that it's now been running. So not major news, but something that's kind of cool and interesting to keep track of. It'll be really interesting to see just how far they manage to push it. I think if they get past 5K, then that's a really nice jump. Some people are speculating that they could hit 10K. I'm not sure it's quite ready for that yet, but it's certainly looking good for EOS, I think. Talking of cryptocurrencies, let's take a look at my trading this week for cryptos. So this week, only 2 trades on Bitcoin Cash. Both of them were shorts, and both of them reasonably small profits. You're talking single digits percentage here. The reason I didn't short them for further, and even though it says quite clearly here that I expect the price to go down to maybe the 6K range in Bitcoin, which is something that I've been saying for several weeks, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm willing to bet on that heavily. So I'm happy to try and open some shorts and get some small gains where I can. But for me, I think it was too risky to have them open any longer. Of course, in hindsight, I could have made a little bit more money, but I'm still happy with how these trades went. So here is the big beast of today's video, and that is the stock recap. There have been so many trades that I've done on stocks in the past few weeks, and there is so much to talk about with earnings. I'm trying to be as concise as I can, but there is simply an awful lot of information to be digested here, and a lot of trading action that I've done before earnings reports, during, effectively, right after earnings reports, and some positions that I've even taken up following that for more long-term positions as well off the back of it. Not to mention the drama that has unfolded within some of those different earnings reports. So I'll try and be as quick as I can. First up, NVIDIA. One trade, 4% profit. I've actually been increasing my position in NVIDIA despite taking the profit here to try and build up the position ready for their earnings report. I think they're going to have a very, very strong earnings. They're very, very dominant in the GPU area of computing. The only downside is that perhaps they may have overestimated the number of sales they were going to get from cryptocurrency mining, which we have seen a decline in, as we saw from the AMD earnings report recently. Facebook, 2 trades, 1% and 2.6%. I'm pretty happy about that. It was basically just buying, following the big short that I did, a couple of positions just to kind of catch a small rebound of maybe 2 or 3%. Turns out I didn't catch it that well, and it didn't bounce as quickly as I hoped it would. So I kind of just took that money and took it out so that I could invest elsewhere during the big, busy earnings period. GoPro. So GoPro is the big one. GoPro is the one that has caused us a few headaches this week. 5 trades in total. 3 of them were nice small profits, basically shorting of around anywhere between like 1 and 5%. I think it was, if I remember correctly. Unfortunately, there were 2 shorts that I still had open as we were approaching market close, and I felt uncomfortable selling them for a loss of around 8, 9, 10%. So I held on to them through earnings, and that was a very, very painful decision because, as it turned out, GoPro actually had a pretty good earnings call, and as a result, their stock jumped, and both of these trades were actually leveraged trades as well, so that really didn't help. So the 15% jump in price that it saw, or 10% after from where it was 5-6%, effectively amounted to 31% losses for both positions for us. So really not great. It basically wiped out a lot of the profit that I did throughout the rest of the week on all of the other trades that I'm about to go through. So I'm really pretty disappointed in myself for that. I took on too much risk on those trades. I knew that there was a possibility of GoPro having a breakout earnings call, but I still took the risk, and yeah, I'm pretty upset with myself over that one. I must say I'm beating myself up about that a bit. But hey, we've just got to move on and deal with it. I took the loss because, again, there's a lot of earnings coming up, so I would rather have just had the funds available and try and recoup some of that loss as quickly as possible. Activision Blizzard. So their earnings call was actually pretty dull for the most part. There are a few interesting things coming up. They've got some new games being released. They've got new content for Destiny coming out soon. They've got the new World of Warcraft coming out soon. So there is a lot of stuff coming for Blizzard, but it's in the future. It's not now. So this quarter was reasonably dull. A lot of questions circulating around, how they're going to deal with the Fortnite crowd and things like that. But really nothing all that exciting, to be honest. That being said, we did close a trade ahead of the earnings because I figured they were going to be reasonably mediocre. So I closed it at a small profit and reopened it later at a slightly better price after the earnings. Tesla. So I closed a trade of 4.3% profit. They had an amazing earnings call, actually. So I've since then upped my position in Tesla substantially. The confidence with which Elon and the CFO from Tesla were talking about becoming cash flow positive and even profitable towards the end of the year was really quite staggering. Basically, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but effectively they were quoted as saying that bar there being some sort of natural disaster that wipes out their factory, they will be cash flow positive soon. So that's very, very good news. We've also had a lot of drama today. Trading literally just halted as I'm recording this video on Tesla following a tweet sent out by Elon. So more and more drama. The earnings call itself was also full of drama. He apologized to the same analyst that he insulted on the last earnings call. Really, really crazy stuff. But I genuinely think the future for Tesla is looking pretty good at the moment. So we'll see where it goes, but I'm feeling pretty bullish on it overall. Next up, Sony. So Sony, again, another amazing earnings call. Very similar to Microsoft, with every sector doing very, very well. They do, however, they did unfortunately kind of dampen the spirits a little bit with some concerns about the increasing competition in the mobile phone sector. So some small concerns there, but still a really, really good quarter for Sony. Interesting earnings call. As far as interesting as a company like Sony can be, I guess. But yeah, a couple of nice trades closed. You know, the first one's pretty much a break even, and I actually closed my last position today as well. I've been taking out some of my money from Sony because although I really like the stock and I think they're doing a lot of great stuff, it does feel like the share price just pretty much doesn't really move. So it's hard to make some good money on it, unfortunately, which is a shame because fundamentally, again, I think it's a really good company. I think it's got a good future as well. Shopify next. So a 2.1% profit and an 8.3% loss. The loss effectively I took on following the drop from the earnings call, even though they had a pretty good earnings call, I think, and a pretty reasonable balance sheet as well. Despite that, the stock did drop a bit along with the rest of the NASDAQ. And I decided to just kind of take that loss on the chin for that one trade and use the money elsewhere again. So not great, not terrible. I'm okay with how that turned out. AMD. So AMD is another one, a company that I've been absolutely in love with for the last 2 years. They've just done really, really amazing stuff, and Lisa Su, the CEO, has really kind of rebuilt AMD from what a lot of people had kind of described as a totally dead company 4 or 5 years ago. So they had amazing profits. A couple of good trades took place here. Quite a few trades in the low percentage range that were more kind of day tradey kind of style, taking advantage of the earnings and ahead of earnings and after earnings. And even like when it hit $20, I would close a couple of positions and then reopen them at $19 and make a bit more money. Things like that. So I've been pretty active on AMD again, and honestly, this has taught me a pretty important lesson about patience. Like you always think when you're a trader with the same kind of mentality as me when it comes to trading. I trade a lot based on fundamentals and where I think the company's going to be in a year or 2 years' time. And with AMD, I ran out of patience near the start of this year, which is really, really pretty depressing to look at in hindsight. They did absolutely amazingly in their earnings call, and it's all basically the same stuff that I said would cause them to be successful. It's just 6 months late. Yeah, it's taught me a lesson, but I'm still happy to see them growing. I did, of course, keep some exposure, not as much as I used to have, but yeah, I'm going to keep trading AMD actively. I think I have a good handle on what they're working on, what's coming up. Perhaps I was just a bit too optimistic about the timescale. I've surprised you. We have another slide of stock recaps. There are so many stocks to talk about, as I mentioned. So here we are, second slide. Let's dig into it. First Solar. First Solar also had an earnings call recently, pretty lackluster. They were actually, they're in a strong position to handle what's going on in the solar market right now. And they do have an awful lot of sales in the pipeline. Something like 80% of their stock is basically already, set to be sold. So they're not really in too bad of a situation on the channel front. But of course, it is still a reasonably uncertain market, and the price of these solar cells is still dropping at the moment, based off of what happened with China recently. That being said, I still think they're a really strong company for the long term. I'm going to try and keep most of my exposure. I did take a very small loss because 2.3%. I thought, that's worth taking a loss on now to free up the extra funds. Pretty much the rest of the stuff that I've got open in First Solar, I'm just going to keep there until they return to profit, which I think is probably at this point going to be back, probably in 2019, I think is realistically when we're looking at for some good green positions in First Solar from where we are at the moment. So if you're not copying me yet and you're watching this, then perhaps this is a reasonable time to copy Open Trades, given where we are with some of these major positions of mine, like First Solar, Solar Edge, and of course the cryptocurrencies. Square, another company that I'm, absolutely head over heels with their performance recently. And it was interesting actually, because during their earnings call, I was listening to the call, and it was pretty interesting. Some interesting questions and comments and things. And there was one question talking about why they've effectively lowered their profit outlook slightly, and effectively it's because they want to reinvest as much money as they can back into the company and do a lot of capex. And reinvest in all sorts of different areas across the company, actually, in fact. So Square, I think, are making really good decisions here because, I listened to their reasoning on why they want to do that and which areas they want to do it in during the earnings call, and I agreed with it. So I bought more immediately after the earnings call. And for some reason, the price actually dropped a little bit straight after the earnings call. So I was really, really taken aback by this because to me, it seemed like an absolutely amazing call. And, here we are a few days later, and Square has more than recovered and pushed to new highs again. So yeah, I feel pretty justified on this. I think Square have got great potential going forward in so many different areas. They're really, really investing across the board. Really, that I think they have still got that kind of cool, innovative startup feel, and I think they can actually encroach on the territory of companies like Revolut and Monzo with their Square Card and all of these different areas. The restaurant stuff they're doing is really cool. Yeah, overall, I'm just super, super happy with them. Very, very confident, and they're going to remain a big part of my portfolio for the rest of this year, I think. Microsoft, 2 trades, 4% profit. Basically, just taking profit here. Again, they had a nice call last week, which I covered a bit more then. Just taking some of the profits out to use elsewhere, really. TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor was a bit of a gamble by me. I've done this a couple of times on TripAdvisor. I keep getting lured into trading it during earnings because it just feels like they're going to do some nice turnaround. But of course, the 1 month that I didn't do it is when they actually had a really big turnaround, a big swing of around 30% or so. The 2 other times I've done it have basically been the same result as this. So I think I've learnt my lesson to just not try and trade TripAdvisor because I guess I just don't understand their fundamentals correctly. I must be missing something because I seem to get it wrong every time. I know I've only done it a few times, but yeah, I think I'm going to give up on TripAdvisor. So that was another 18% loss, pretty big. Pretty unfortunate, but that's just the way it goes sometimes when you're trying to play these earnings calls. Twitter. So again, this is a big contributor to our losses. 28% loss here. Again, it felt like I just needed to take the loss to free up a bit more money. It just didn't seem right to hold it there. It felt like it would take too long to recover back to the kind of levels that was an acceptable loss. So sometimes you just gotta take it on the chin and use the funds elsewhere. And realistically, like I know it's hard for you guys to kind of understand it potentially in terms of just why I need to do this and why I can't just hold on to these trades and wait for them to turn back around. But realistically, many of the trades that I did on AMD, on Square, Snapchat, these trades were all funded by the money that I took out of these loss leading trades. So already we've earned some of that 28% back from these other trades. I guess that's the way to look at it, maybe. But I'll allow you to judge as well. Feel free to go through my history on eToro and check for yourself. Back to Solar again. So we have Solar Edge. They also had their earnings call. Again, similar sort of feeling to First Solar. There really wasn't that much fire in the bellies of the board team that were on the call, the directors that were on the call. But again, just like First Solar, I still have very, 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 very high hopes for Solar Edge moving forwards. They've given us some very strong gains in the past. We're not really that far down percentage-wise on them. We're down by like 15 to 20%. Which I think is pretty acceptable to just hold on to and hang on to and wait for the good times to roll back in towards the tail end of the year. I also, since the markets were going pretty crazy on that day that Square was down, I decided to take advantage of that. Did a very quick trade on the Nasdaq for a nice small profit for the bounce. Pretty happy with that. And in hindsight, again, I look at the chart and I think I could have ridden that quite a lot higher. But with these kind of day trades, I tend to be a little bit more cautious and not hold on to the positions for too long if it's something that I'm not really super actively trading. Just two more left now. Snapchat, more shorts. For some reason, eToro hasn't had access to shorting Snapchat very much recently, so I've not been able to do it. It came back like for one day, like a one-day shorting extravaganza. I opened a couple of positions. I made 4% and 8%. Very, very happy with those. The other positions I had were actually just about profitable, and I would have closed them if they did turn green, just to be cautious through earnings, but unfortunately they didn't, so I still have those open. Their earnings are coming up this week. There is a chance that they could go up, and the two shorts that I still have left open could see some downside, but I don't think it's going to go up by a massive amount if it does. So we'll wait and see where it goes, but hopefully my shorts remain intact and we can continue to trade Snapchat actively. Even if they go badly, I'm not going to be too upset by it because Snapchat has been very, very good to me over the past year or so of trading them. They just seem to always go down. So yeah, it's a nice stock to trade. And actually, I even did a long trade on them today. So you'll see that in next week's report. Finally, last of all, we have Spotify. One trade, very small profit, pretty negligible, really. Honestly, I can't even remember the circumstances of the trade, but I imagine it was, again, probably just trying to move some money around so that I could trade other things. That's it for my stocks. We got through it. I did a lot of trading this week. It was very, very busy. I am exhausted from earnings calls. So with that out of the way, let's look at where that actually leaves us when we kind of combine all those trades. So we have realized trades were closed, 41 trades in total. 35 of those were profitable, 6 were unprofitable. Of the trades that were profitable, the average was 3.42%. The average loss was almost 20%, just shy, so pretty painful. You can understand now why it's wiped out all of those nice smaller trades we did. Our most traded instrument for this week was AMD with 7 trades, and our total realized profit for the week was plus 0.06%. Hey, at least we didn't lose anything. On to performance, you can see we closed out July at plus 2% profit. It's not the 8-9% that I was hoping for, which is almost where we were at one point when Bitcoin was at its peak. But hey, that's just how it goes. August, we're going to see some reasonably heavy drawdown from the cryptos this month, I think. So perhaps as low as minus 5% on the overall portfolio performance. So another 2% or so. You can see week 31 was already a pretty bad drawdown experience for us. Although I should point out that is partially caused by the stock markets closing relatively low on Friday. So a lot of that 4% is actually just from all of the stock positions that were drawn down, which should bounce back, and in fact have bounced back from what I've seen so far this week. So looking ahead, we are very, very nearly done with earnings. We have Etsy, Disney, Snapchat, and Nvidia still to come this week. Well, those are the major ones at least. Etsy, we have a reasonably large position at the moment. Very, very confident about them. There's just so much room for them to grow. There's the big news that came out of Germany about one of their competitors shutting down and sending all of their traffic to Etsy. So expecting some good stuff from them. I say expecting. Of course, I actually have a bit of hindsight here because I'm recording this video a bit late. So I've seen their earnings call. It was good. I'm pretty happy. You'll hear more about that next week. Disney, I'm not too sure if I'm going to trade it or not. I think I'm looking a bit more in the future for Disney, but it's nice to keep an eye on what's going on there anyway. Snapchat, as I mentioned earlier, we still have 2 shorts open. Their earnings are midweek, so hopefully they go reasonably badly for them. I know that's kind of a horrible thing to say, but that's what we need for our stocks to perform there. And finally, Nvidia, which I'm very, very, very confident about. I think they will have a killer earnings, although there is the potential that the cryptocurrency stuff has maybe held them back a little bit. That all being said and done, we have ended this month of July, I guess, in profit. So that was a nice result. It wasn't quite as much as I hoped for, but looking ahead, we have all of August ahead of us. I do think it's going to be bearish on cryptos, so it's going to be a bit of an uphill fight to try and make sure that we end in some green this month. Hopefully, we can just continue to realize these nice green trades, and then when cryptos eventually turn around, we will have a really nice, healthy green profit waiting for us. That just about does it from me, guys. Thanks for watching again. Thanks for copying. Please remain patient. I know it's very difficult when the cryptos just keep going down, but it will not last forever. The fundamentals are stronger than they have ever been. So I would urge you to just keep calm, remain patient, and we will see some nice profit at some point, hopefully before the end of this year. Thanks for watching, everyone.